Hey guys, welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Miller if you like. So let's get to it. I kind of want to talk about some of the things now that the roster is set and the practice squad is set. Some of the things that might lead to a better outcome for the Cowboys season than you might expect. Tomorrow I'm going to go through some of the things that might lead to a worse outcome than you might expect. But today we're going to accentuate the positive. Let's start with the interior defensive line. So the Cowboys have had trouble stopping the run over the last few years. Not necessarily in general, right? Last year, I believe they were 17th in the league in stopping the run, so pretty much right on middle of the pack. The year before, they were probably like 21st, 20th. Still not in the bottom of the league at all. So the the narrative of the Cowboys not being able to stop the run is very subjective, right? When you dig deeper into that, it's sort of like in their losses, they have not been able to stop the run, and in their wins, they've been so far ahead that the other team is forced to stop running the ball. Therefore, the Cowboys end up with lower rushing totals against them. But if you dig a little bit further, what is a problem for me in the last couple of years is whenever they play a great running team or a team that is committed. For example, when Mike McCarthy first took his trip back to Green Bay and they played the Green Bay Packers ran the ball damn near 50 times in that game. Even though they were down 21-7 at one point, the Green Bay Packers continued to run the ball and actually got back into the game via the run, which flies in the face of what most people try to tell you about the NFL or what most of the analytical people try to push about the NFL. Oh man, you're down by 2 scores. It's after halftime or it's late in the game. You don't run the ball, you pass the ball. This is why you're down 2 scores. The Green Bay Packers got back into the game by running the football. And they just stayed committed to the run for the entire game, no matter what the score, no matter what the down and distance was. So I'm looking at Mozzie Smith. I'm looking at Jordan Phillips. I'm looking at Linville Joseph, and of course Diggy Zua and Demarcus Lawrence and Marshawn Nealon, and even to some extent Micah Parsons, Eric Kendricks, Maris Leofow, DeMarvion Overshone, Damone Clark. Like that front seven of the Cowboys should be able to stop the run. So if that holds up the way it looks on paper and the way some people think that it's going to go, the Cowboys will be able to shut down the run, and that will allow some of those players that are talented on the outside, i.e., Trayvon Diggs or Malik Hooker, Jordan Lewis, Donovan Wilson, some of those other people, that are very good at forcing turnovers or, in Jordan Lewis and Trayvon Diggs' case, covering their man. That'll allow them to kind of sit back on the pass, sit down on that stuff. And then on top of that, you have that pass rush with Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence coming off the edges, and then big guys like Jordan Phillips and Linville Joseph, but more so on your passing downs, you probably have Jordan Phillips and Osa in the inside, and then Parsons and Lawrence on the outside, and having those guys go. Carl Lawson will also factor into this as well. But you should be able to, if you stop the run, which it looks like the Cowboys have shored up some of those weaknesses as far as stopping the run, they'll be able to tee off in the passing game. And to me, that's the Cowboys' strength. Their secondary, even though Deron Bland's out for probably the first 4 games, their secondary, and then I would say the first 6, actually. Let me backpedal on that because he's on injured reserve right now, which means he's mandatory to miss the first 4 games. But the Cowboys aren't going to have him come back after missing 4 games and then that 5th game say, oh, go out and play 70 snaps. They're not going to do that. They're going to practice him that week. They're going to practice him the next week. And then they'll probably put him in, but kind of watch his workload. And then I feel like after that, it's the bye week. And then after that, you probably get full Deron Bland. So he's going to miss about 6 games. And then in the seventh game, he's probably going to play limited snaps. Then he's going to have a bye week. So by the eighth game of the season, he's probably going to be back to his full self. Let's hope everything else continues to kind of stay normal during that time. Once he comes back, then we're able to absorb if there's any sort of things that pop up in the meantime, or after that, we'll be able to kind of absorb those injuries because Deron Bland's back, and now we can kind of have a complete secondary. So, but that plays into the Cowboys' strength there. So that's one of the things I'm looking out for. Another thing that could lead to more Cowboys success than people are expecting is that offensive line. Cooper Beebe is a dog. Cooper Beebe's a man. He will put some people in the dirt. He said it himself. He doesn't like the block people. He likes the dirt people. And it's very encouraging to see when he came into training camp, he had problems with snapping. He had problems with snapping the ball and then getting off on the block in time, getting to the right, edge of the defender, whether it's squaring up with the defender or attacking the defender's inside or outside shoulder to wall off whatever the type of run play is. He was having lots of trouble with that. But as training camp came on, he started getting those snaps down. Then he started getting down the snaps and blocking the defender. So Cooper Beebe is going to be probably one of your best offensive linemen pretty much right off the rip. Terrence Steele was coming back off an ACL last year. Now he's a full almost 2 years removed from that injury. And that's when most players start to show the type of things that they showed prior to the injury, the promise, the consistency. And I feel like we'll get some more out of that Terrence Steele that we saw, in 2023 before he got injured, where he pretty much was one of your best offensive linemen and probably your best run blocker. Zach Martin, he's not coming into camp off a holdout and then playing, basically with one leg pretty much injured almost all of last year. So you had a one-legged Zach Martin. Now you're getting a Zach Martin that is going into the season healthy. He's not coming off of any surgeries. He's not coming off of any injuries. He's not holding out. He's had a full training camp. And then Tyler Guyton. Tyler Guyton might be your weakest link on the offensive line at this point. I do see that even though he does have a lot of athleticism, I did talk about this before, how he tends to play with his head down, and gets a little bit overextended, gets his shoulders over his feet. And a lot of times a defensive end can beat him with a swim move or get him off balance, but then he has the athleticism to recover and drive the player past the quarterback. So he'll still have to learn a little bit about that. He is 6'8". He's a very tall guy. He's very nimble. He's a rookie. He's raw. So those are the type of things you expect, and the type of things you can do to counteract that is put, someone like Schoolmaker or Jake Ferguson to a side or Hunter Lipke to a side. You can also send a running back over there to chip before he goes out in this screen route. And, we got a thick guy like Zeke who, unfortunately, is probably going to be the starting running back. But one of the Zeke's strengths is pass protection and being able to chip and help, before he gets out into his route. So his IQ, should be able to help some of those things that Tyler Guyton is going to find challenging. And then on the other side, you have a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who's had a lot of snaps in the NFL, seen pretty much all the defenses he'll ever see in his entire career. So he should be able to help also set protections and things like that to help mitigate any struggles that Tyler Guyton might have. And then, of course, you got the rock on the left side, Tyler Smith, who's an all-pro, probably going to be better this year, which is hard to imagine, than he was last year and the year before. So the offensive line is one of those things that might help the Cowboys get past not necessarily having a great running back room, because there'll definitely be holes for those running backs to run through. The other part is the receiving core, right? CeeDee Lamb is back under contract. Brandon Cooks is hitting the season starting, basically picking up where he left off. The first 6 weeks of the season last year, prior to the 49ers game, Brandon Cooks was starting so slow. He was non-existent in that 49ers game. But then after the bye week, when CeeDee Lamb started getting going, then Brandon Cooks started getting going, and then the Cowboys offense in general started getting going. I don't think they're going to take 5, 6, 7 weeks to recognize what they have in their receiving core as far as Brandon Cooks. So I feel like that should hit the ground running more. And I love Flournoy as a young player. I think Flournoy actually has a chance to be something of your future third or second wide receiver, once Brandon Cooks moves on. I'm not ready to give Jalen Tolbert the type of credit that some are giving him just yet, only because I've seen him be a training camp star last year, and it resulted in 18 catches, which is a smidge more than one catch per game. And maybe, I think he averaged maybe about 17 yards per game. So one catch, 17 yards, and that's supposed to be your third receiver. I don't necessarily know about that. Hopefully, what he did in training camp, this year, and he carries it into the games. If you tell me at the end of the season Jalen Tolbert has 50 catches for 600 yards and 3 touchdowns, now that's a little bit more. It's about 3.5 catches a game, maybe about 35 yards or so. What I would like to see is him just kind of really step up. But if he doesn't step up, I do believe Jalen Brooks. I do believe Jalen Tolbert. I do believe Kevontae Turpin as that gadget, move around, do it all type of guy will be able to make up for some of the things that Jalen Tolbert might lack. So the receiving core could also be, in its best case scenario, our linebacking core. That linebacking core is night and day from last year. Last year, we went into the season with basically, Damone Clark coming off a neck, and, Leighton Vander Esch also a neck. And we decided, hey, this is the way to go. And then once Leighton Vander Esch went down, and in the preseason, DeMarvion Overshown went down. I don't know what the Cowboys were thinking about not investing pretty much anything else into that linebacking core. They were just like, hey, we'll do what we got to do. But maybe it's the Dan Quinn thing. Dan Quinn likes light, fast guys. He wants to match speed with speed. He wants guys who can cover. And we saw how that worked when teams like the 49ers came to town and wanted to run it down our throat. Or teams like the Buffalo Bills came to town, and I remember one specific play with Marquise Bell against the Buffalo Bills, and they were already kicking our ass. And then there was a play late in the game. It was either late third quarter, early fourth quarter, where Marquise Bell is getting blocked by the guard 12 yards downfield and getting just pancaked and driven into the ground while Cook is coming right behind him and running it for like a 15-yard gain. So I think this year with someone like Eric Kendricks and someone like Damone Clark and Demarion Overshown and Maris Leofal and then Market Parsons playing some more linebacker, I feel like you'll have a little bit more stability there. You definitely have a lot more size there, especially if you add the addition of Buddy Johnson. So there's some reason for optimism there. Also, the safeties are pretty stable. They've always been good pretty much the entire time under Mike McCarthy. He's sort of, except for that one throwaway year with Nolan. But after you got Dan Quinn in here, the safety play really picked up, and the Cowboys seem to finally understand the importance of the safety play. As far as the running backs, let's say those guys are just solid. Let's say you've got Ezekiel Elliott. Maybe he's not doing what he did earlier in his career, but he's also not like the 3.5 yards per carry guy. Let's say he gets it up to 3.8, and then you have somebody like Rico Dowdle averaging 4.3 yards per carry. You have someone Deuce Vaughn getting your juice, so maybe he's closer to the 4.7, 4.8 yards. You have Hunter Lipke in short yardage and also playing the tight end role and opening up those holes. I think that's a reason for optimism. I think Jake Ferguson is going to take a step to be either a borderline Pro Bowl player or a Pro Bowl player this year. So, I mean, you have the Cowboys, that type of stuff, it all comes together. Now, let's even factor in injuries. Let's say at the safety position you get an injury. Well, you have Wanye Thomas there, right? You also have Marquise Bell there playing his natural position of safety. And then you have Izzy McQuamu adding a depth piece that can be inside corner boundary corner, or safety. That's why he made the roster. It's a term that the Cowboys tend to use to overvalue a player, but in this case, his position flex is a real thing. So, if you have an injury to, let's say, Brandon Cook, knock on wood, Brandon Cooks goes down, I do believe somebody like Flournoy or somebody like Jalen Tober, who's shown the ability to make tough catches, whether it's a tough catch because he's covered or whether it's a tough catch because the ball wasn't necessarily thrown as well as it needed to be. Someone like Jalen Brooks has really good hands and is able to make some of those catches that we need to keep the drives going. If Zeke goes down, Rico Dowdle is basically another Zeke, maybe just a little bit faster and younger. But also, you have somebody like Deuce Vaughn who seems to have shown improvement, and Hunter Lipke who can run out of a single back set and basically be your Zeke fill-in. So all the depth questions, and trust me, I've heard the depth questions, when the Cowboys let certain players go off season. I do believe Tony Pollard will end up being a big loss. I do believe that he provided something that the offense doesn't have right now. But as far as like Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Jonathan Hankins, I mean, if you look at it, Jonathan Hankins, okay, Jordan Phillips is a better Jonathan Hankins. He's a better player than Jonathan. Linville Joseph, probably a slightly worse player than Jonathan Hankins. Mozzie Smith, we don't know yet. The jury's still out. He's still young. We got to see what's happening. But at least they have numbers at the position to attack that. Dorrance Armstrong, that's your Marshawn Nealon. You know what I'm saying? And then if you take Dante Fowler is probably going to be your Carl Lawson. So not saying that, everything should be exactly the same as it was before. But on the flip side, I don't think it's necessarily as doom and gloom as some of the people have made it out to be. As far as your offensive line depth, you lost Tyler Biadasz, you gained a Cooper Beebe. I feel like you're probably going to get better and stronger center play out of Cooper Beebe from day one than you got out of Tyler Biadasz last year. Tyron Smith, if you go look at his PFF grades, and I know PFF isn't everything, but when it comes to his run blocking, he really had some trouble. Now, when it comes to his pass blocking, he was as good as ever. So his pass blocking with Tyler Guyton, you're going to get some lesser pass blocking than you got with Tyron Smith, but you're probably going to get some better run blocking than you got with Tyron Smith. So you have to decide whether or not you can mitigate those losses with some of those other gains and kind of mix that package together to still be comparable. Plus, I do believe the Tyler Guyton we see in November and December will be a lot different than the Tyler Guyton we see in September and October. So all in all, let's say all those things bounce the way we're talking about, and those, some of those positives accentuate themselves. I could very well see the Cowboys going, let's say, 11-6. 11-6, if some of those things turn out to be better than we thought. I do think no matter what, they're going to start slow out of the gate just from the nature of their schedule. You have Cleveland, you have Baltimore, you have a team in Pittsburgh who is generally a team that, for some reason, finds a way to win games that they're quote-unquote not supposed to win. You have the 49ers early. You have the Detroit Lions early. So I do think there is a world where the Cowboys could be, after 8 games, 3-5. But then as we get towards the back half of that season, there's going to be some games where, they'll be able to make up some ground. Also, there are going to be games that the Cowboys lose that we don't expect them to lose, but there's also going to be these weird games that the Cowboys win that we don't expect them to win. So, keeping that all into account, I could see if all those go together. If you're asking me what's my best case scenario for the Cowboys, I know they've been 12-5 for 3 years straight. I say 11-6. But that's all I got for today. I'll come back with some more stuff tomorrow as far as worst case scenario, things that might not work out that we think will work out, and what that record looks like if those things don't happen. But if you like the show, if you like the episode, hit the like button, subscribe so you know when I'm coming on. You can submit questions via Twitter at JMillerIYL. That's J Miller if you like. You can also submit questions to the email. It's knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. Again, knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. I'll take them both ways. You can also comment below, and I'll take all of those, put them in the mailbag. Hopefully we can make that like a regular segment. But until then, I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Mill. Jay Miller if you like. Peace.